Special thanks to Reddit user Daddy Bamboo for granting me permission to use their story. And like always, my wonderful listeners, do enjoy. Out of all my earliest memories, the one that I remember the most clearly is of a strange experience that happened to me when I was 8 years old. I do have a lot of memories of times even before that event, but they're all overshadowed by that one night. It's something that I don't share often, except for a couple of times around campfires. I'm not really superstitious, and I often explain it as a figment of my imagination, or a terrible nightmare. But every time we're sharing ghost stories, I have to tell mine. I can't tell for sure, but I think I was around 8 years old when it happened. I had discovered reading, and books became my primary hobby for the better part of a couple of years. While I don't really read much these days, back then turning pages was what I was doing for most of my waking hours. I read from breakfast to bed, and against my mother's wishes, even under my covers I would sneak stories to read. My parents had caught me countless times doing so, but with time I developed a flawless plan. At 8 p.m., I was expected to go to the bathroom, brush my teeth and go to sleep. 30 minutes later, my parents would go into the living room and watch TV, which is when I would sneak out of my room, make my way through the hallway and tiptoe into the kitchen, where I would carefully borrow a pocket flashlight from the junk drawer. Usually I would read until my parents went to their room, around 10:30, before sneaking back into the kitchen to put the flashlight back into the drawer. Although after that night, I stopped doing that. I had my nose pressed into a book I borrowed from the library, hiding under my blankets while the small flashlight illuminated the words I was devouring. I don't recall exactly what I was reading, although I remember being drawn to stories about fantastic worlds, or ones that pitted a child detective against intriguing mystery. Now, that night wasn't like any other night, because my parents weren't in the house. They had left only to return in the small hours of the morning, which meant I could read longer. It must have been midnight when I felt it. Well, in reality, the feeling started hours ago. Only it was at midnight when I finally acknowledged it. It wasn't much of a feeling, just a slight impression that I was able to brush away easily. An afterthought, but one that was peculiarly awful. There was someone in the hallway. It's not that I heard anything, like a door or footsteps, but I felt it. For hours I had this impression, this chilling thought that someone was in the hallway. I was convinced that if I was to open my bedroom door, I could find someone standing there. It started as a thought, but the more pages I turned, the more it worried me. Were my parents back? I didn't hear the car pulling into the driveway, nor did I hear the front door creaking open. But someone was in the hallway, definitely. I was sure of it. It had been standing there for hours now, and I could tell even without a sound. Nowadays, I would associate that feeling with the sentiment of being watched. But the issue is that I was alone in the house. At the time, I only thought it could be my mother, and I was worried that if I peeked my curious head out of the door, she would know that I was reading past my bedtime again. I then deduced my parents were home, and somehow I mustn't have heard them come into the house. I was afraid they could see the glow of the flashlight from under the door, so I turned it off. I waited under my blankets for a bit longer, hoping the feeling would wear off. It didn't. I couldn't tell the exact reason that pushed me into doing it, but something between curiosity and concern convinced me to take a look. I was ready to be caught by my mother and be berated. I was determined. I decided to leave my flashlight behind and walk slowly to my door as to not make a sound. It's in a similar way that I opened my door in the slightest just so I could slip a glance into the corridor. The house was pitch black if not for the frail glow of the moonlight coming from the kitchen window. If there was someone there, it would be hard to tell. But I could still see it. I'm not sure I saw a silhouette, but the outside light reflected on something. Eyes. A pair of eyes. And from there I could make out a face. A head. I assumed the body came with it. But all I could make clearly were two eyes, fixed to the back of the hallway, staring. The person was completely static. Had it been there all this time? Why wouldn't it move? I had no idea what it was, but I knew one thing. It wasn't my mom. Without shutting the door, I ran to my bed and jumped into my blankets, hiding under my covers, trembling. I was shutting my eyes as hard as I could, clenching at my blankets in absolute terror. I had no idea what it was that I saw, but my blankets were the only place I felt safe. Now, I didn't hear anything after that. No footsteps or creaking of any doors. I didn't hear a single noise, but somehow I could still feel it. As strongly as I knew someone was in the hallway, I knew it finally moved. I knew it walked into my bedroom and it approached my bed. I knew it was next to me, slouched over my shaking body, its head glaring down at me. I didn't want to move. I was afraid my leg would brush against its body, or that motion would alert it to take me or hurt me. I could feel its head inches away from me. I couldn't sleep. I must have spent hours immobile, trembling in my bed, too scared to fall asleep. But I did eventually. The next morning, my mother woke me up for school and discovered in shock a book and a flashlight in my bed, and I was grounded again. She took the torch away and hid it somewhere I wouldn't find it. Little did she know, I could never read past my bedtime again. This peculiar event was the sole reason I was terrified of the hallway as a child. I didn't think I told my parents what happened, but since then, I would always make sure my bedroom door was closed when I went to sleep. I would never go into the hallway when it was dark, and I would always sleep under my blankets, my back facing the door. To this day, I'm not sure about what I saw. I'm a skeptic at heart. I do not believe in the paranormal or anything in the likes. Still, I often think about it, and I try to find a way to explain it. I think it might have been a case of sleep paralysis or something. Maybe it was just a nightmare. But I'm almost certain that this wasn't a dream. I can't remember how the house was decorated at that age, and maybe what I saw at the end of the hallway was a picture frame. That would explain the face, and the moonlight would have reflected from the glass. That would almost put my mind at ease, if not for one little thing. If it was just a picture, why did the light only reflect on the eyes?